Good morning, everybody. I hope you're all doing well and find yourself in good spirits and looking forward to a happy weekend. Today, I wanted to follow up on some of the conversations I hear on YouTube. And I'll start with a conversation I believe Cholo Trucker had on Chicano. So, I tend to identify as Mexican. And if I have to, and if I don't, then I'll just say I'm a human. And that's where I want to be. Um, but there was this conversation around Chicano, and I wanted to share what my first impression of it was, um, and how labels do serve to separate us. I came here as a little kid, and I've done preschool on forward. All my schooling was here. I grew up here. This was I'm an American in my experience, and as a kid, I felt, and I'm not even going to project other people's intentions. I'll just say what I felt. I felt that coming from another country made me inferior somehow to people who were born here. And I think that um, that is also appealed, what made Trump appealing to some people who weren't white. I had a friend, not even Raza, who he grew up with Raza, but he often felt slighted by the dominant ruling class here, the white folks. And when Trump came along, he became a wholehearted supporter. And I'm not going to. When we had discussions around the border, I got this sense that what made Trump appealing to so many is that they could be racist without having to make it about race, but about where you were born. So if you were born here, you were automatically better than someone born somewhere else. That's what he was telling you. And I think folks who maybe felt threatened or outcompeted by immigrants really ran to that. And that's my opinion. I could be wrong about a lot of people. I'm sure a lot of people didn't do it for that. It's possible that folks that I know who went to him did it strictly on 2A. They wanted to keep their legally owned guns, and believed the Democrats were going to take them. So, anyways, that was a long digression. Um, I often experienced a sense of some Chicanos having a sense of superiority because they were born here. And that was my definition of it. You came from Mexican parents and you were born here. That was growing up what I thought was a Chicano. Someone born in the U.S. coming from Mexican parents or grandparents even. Um, and so that was always seemed like a division. And in the early 80s, late 70s, the Mexican community seemed scared of Chicanos. They were faster. They were more sophisticated. They were more likely to stab you than a paisa. That's what we believed. They smoked weed. Mexicans just drank for the most part. There were a lot of little things. But fast forward 40 years later, and I see Chicano like I see American. It's an experience. I think if someone came here when they were 2 and grew up with people who were born here, they pretty much had the same life experiences as each other. And so when people talk about, Chicanos say people from Mexico don't like us. Well, there's people from Mexico who came here and were made to feel inferior. That's part of the history of some gangs, that they came here and they were picked on because they were new. And so that's what I saw Chicano as, was the American experience. That's what I see it as now. And when I look at it, again, I don't like labels. I don't like to lump people into groups because I believe it causes division. Um, and I also think it denies people their life experience. I think saying all Chicanos are the same is denying one person who might have a completely different experience than the other person. In fact, there's a quote by a really wise person that says, "Once you label me, you deny me." You know, I'm no longer me. I'm that expectation of what that label is. And so, as I lived here and lived the American experience and came to understand ethnicity a little bit better, um, going beyond the hats we wear, the food we eat. Look, I eat tacos. Oh, look, I got a sombrero. Hey, check out my huaraches. And I wear those things. I'm proud to wear them. They keep me comfortable. I get huaraches from Mexico because I'm trying to preserve the art there. It's a dying art. People don't wear them no more. So if I can buy them and keep that guy going, making them by hand, I'm going to try to do that. Um, and so I study my culture. I read about it. I make it a point to improve my Spanish. I make it a point to engage with all raza. But I don't buy into the labels or beat my chest about brown pride. I didn't. I was born this way. I didn't do anything to be brown. Um, Again, so going back to the Chicano thing, I saw at least two different paths for the Chicanos and people who came here as little kids, and now, the people coming here now. One was that, a lot of folks talk about Cesar Chavez and they celebrate him. And what I've seen is that a lot of people who marched with him, whose parents marched with him, they became, community organizers, nonprofit executive directors, and politicians. I see a lot of politicians whose legacy is they march with Cesar Chavez. And so California, I believe, does have a lot of Chicano politicians, but they also have a lot of Chicanos who inherit poverty and dysfunction and oppression. And and I don't always feel like the two are connected. I do hear on YouTube that, we're left behind, we're not at the table. And to a certain degree, that's probably true. But what also is true is that, Los Angeles has had a Mexican mayor. Sacramento has had a Mexican mayor. We've had a Mexican attorney general. We have Mexican cabinet members in Washington. New Mexico, Bill Richardson was half Mexican. If you guys are saying, being part makes you part of raza, well, that's raza then. George Bush, his brother Jeb was governor, but he was married to a Mexican lady from Guanajuato. And so their kid is half Mexican. And he's active there politically. And his views are probably not my views, but he is, part raza there as a somebody. He comes from a legacy of politics. And so I think what we need to recognize is why some Chicanos and some raza keep inheriting dysfunction and poverty and others make it to Washington, and why those positions aren't moving our community along fast enough. I'm going to be fair and say that, I've benefited from a lot of liberal policies, and I Googled it and saw one just recently because I do hear people bash liberals. Well, what have they ever done for raza? Well, one thing they recently did is the street vendor law, which allowed people to sell on the streets, provided, they get their little permits and stuff. That's something for the raza because, let's face it, most street vendors are raza. So next time you ask, what have they ever done for us? You can point to that one thing. Now, here's the other thing. I see a lot of raza take political sides, and they do it without thought. They're just going to attack the other side. You don't really hear deep delves into the issues or their understanding of them. Their conservatism means attacking liberal figureheads, and vice versa. The liberals uh, discourse involves attacking conservative figures. Now, here's the thing that I think I do that is different from everyone else. I advocate for liberal policies. I support liberal policies. I'm liberal minded. And I'm the harshest critic of liberals. You think about that. You think about that. Most of my advocacy is criticizing liberals for not living up to what they're supposed to be doing, including Chicano ones. Your conservatism involves criticizing Bill Biden's senility. That really, that I'm supposed to believe you know something because that's the extent of your information sharing. So I think what people need to look at is the Chicanos that are at the table for us already, and what they're saying and what they're doing. And if the two are not reconciling, then you push them to live up to what they said they're going to do for us. And that's not to say you shouldn't run for office or try to affect change as well. But to say there's no one at the table, that there's no raza there, that we don't have any media. You know what? If you drive through the Central Valley, you'll be hard-pressed to find an English radio station. They're all in Spanish or religious. You know, I can find 10 channels right now that are raza oriented and you know, enjoy most of them. And so the folks who say, well, we're not in Hollywood, we're not accepted there. Did you watch Betty La Fea? Did you watch George Lopez, or did you criticize him for some bullshit? Do you follow John Leguizamo? You know, there's a lot of people out there, and you can start supporting them. Instead of saying no one supports us, let's say you got to support us. And I don't believe in, there's a lot of tokenism in the world. I've seen a lot of people who are there in positions of power just because they're black or brown or Asian, and they suck at their jobs. They don't bring any benefit to our community. They're there to serve their boss so that they can be the fancy raza or the fancy brother, sister at the party, the one with the good job, the one that pulled up in the nice car. That's what's important to them, not how they can best serve the people that look like them and don't have what they have. You know, in my advocacy, I bring up a lot that, you know, there's a lot of Chicanos that inherit poverty, that inherit dysfunction, that are not plugged into the political Chicano class, who live in good neighborhoods, who have nice lives, who use your suffering and pain to get more money. That's somewhere we could focus. To say there's no one there is not true. To say there's people there that we put there and we need to hold accountable is a better story. And if you don't like them, then you can learn and run for office yourself. But you got to push them to do what they said they were going to do in the meantime. So, something else, you know, I looked up a few things, and here's another one that I found. So, when people talk about this generation, and I'm talking about raza specifically, you know, I often hear, well, they're not like they were in the 90s. Those are the values of generational poverty, generational dysfunction. When I think of this generation, this is what I think about. And this was the first thing that popped up on Google, but it was in the back of my head. UC Santa Barbara has been named a Hispanic serving institution, making it the first member of the prestigious American Association of Universities and fourth University of California campus to earn the designation. The Hispanic Association of Colleges and Universities awards the designation to higher education institutions where at least 25% of the students are Latino. The UC enrolls roughly 44,700 Latino students, 23% of its undergraduate population. More than 72% of these students are the first in their families to go to college. That's this generation that everybody gripes about. That's something good. More than 72% are the first to go to college, and they're in the UC system. That's our raza too. Or do you not recognize yourself in them? Do you only recognize yourself in 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 the ones that inherit generational poverty? Because those might have been people who inherited poverty, and they might have inherited dysfunction, but they made something of it, and now they're at a university and will hopefully learn something that they can bring back to help their community, not harm it. Because again, there are a lot of people in positions of power that are raza. And when they vote and they make decisions, they disfavor raza because maybe we don't vote like the other people in their district do. When the, but when they make decisions, if they're on the city council or board of supervisors, or mayors, they're considering a lot of things, and some of those things are the economy of the city, taxes, who's going to be in an uproar, who isn't, and we lose. The raza loses in land use decisions. If there's a factory that's going to pollute, look at the Cerrell report, CERRELL. Waste Management commissioned a contractor for where to put polluting industries. And they said, put it in brown neighborhoods, put it in Catholic neighborhoods. And this is a report from the state. The state paid for this. And what happened is those sources ended up getting put in brown communities. There's one in Modesto, But again, we do have a lot of people in office and in power who look like us, who are aware that we're there. And that's who makes the decisions about us. Another thing I read was that, and this is from the LA Times newspaper. It says Latino voters would see a major boost in political clout under new congressional and legislative districts approved unanimously Monday by the independent citizen panel charged with redrawing the state's political maps. Advocates for Black and Asian American voters who had feared their communities' voices would be diminished under earlier drafts of the maps said they were pleased with the final product. And, they were the group that designed these maps was trying to not pit ethnicities against each other. It wasn't about, the Mexican community has to compete with the Black community for resources, because we're always going to lose that way. We got to work together. I also Googled how many mayors were in California, and there were over 40. Again, Villagrosa was a mayor for LA. You guys live there. If you live there, you would know better what he did for your community. You probably followed him closer. And then we have, Alex Padilla running for the Senate. So there are people there. You support them if you believe in their policies. I like their rhetoric. I believe in their rhetoric, but I don't believe politicians always live up to it. And so that's where I push them and bother them and make them dislike me, because I'm calling them out on their own rhetoric. You said this, but you did this, and so that's pretty much it. I don't want to drag this out too long. I wanted to make it more positive in highlighting how many new Mexican folks, raza folks, Latinos, Hispanics, whatever label they want to put on them, are going to college, and it's new ones. And there was that law that I found, and I found it just this morning, on the street vendors. That's a big thing. That's a real big thing. And the people who opposed it were probably restaurateurs and people who had money. So can't say nothing is done. I think a lot of good stuff is done by even the politicians that I call out often and all the time, because I'm focusing on what they're not doing, not what they are. There's enough sycophants in the world to flatter people for their rhetoric alone, and I ain't one of them. So anyways, that said, I hope you guys have, again, a blessed weekend, and thank you for your time.